When something like a new season, a new tier, a new expansion drops for a game, that's usually your great jumping in point as a new player. And Lost Ark is at that spot here as we got tier 4/season 3 coming in NA and it's already out in KR. Now if you're watching this, I'm under the assumption that you already have a good idea of what Lost Ark is. It is a very popular MMO in Korea, and even in the West we had 1.3 million concurrent players at the start, and now it's not so great. So I wanted to break down pros and cons and just talk about the game a little bit as somebody who has been playing consistently since day one. There are basically 3 major points in Lost Ark that really just carry the entire game, and without them working in tandem with one another, the game would be basically dead. These 3 things are the classes, the raid, and overall combat feel, which I'm going to be honest, in this game when I looked at trailers, I wasn't really that impressed, and going into the game, I was very unimpressed. It took me until the first raids to actually fall in love with the game. But as somebody who comes from a traditional MMOs who have 20 skills on their hotbar, to be reduced down to 8 felt really bad. But it really turned into a less is more situation as every skill really felt like it had purpose and also not a terrible cooldown. Like, WoW, you have some skills with like 2 to 5 minute cooldowns. That doesn't exist here. Well, besides Awakenings, which is like your ultimate skills. But the point is, instead of having like 5 or 10 skills that are super situational, every skill had a very direct impact and purpose. And surprisingly, even with that limited amount of skills, every class still feels really good and really unique from one another. Yes, there are going to be classes with a good amount of similarities, like we have male and female gender swaps to certain classes. Every class has 2 builds, by the way, 2 engravings. So Gunslinger and Deadeye, for example, are male and female counterparts of one another. They both have one engraving that uses all 3 of their weapons: shotguns, a rifle, and handguns. Gunslinger is very much more focused on rifles, while Deadeye is going to be more focused on shotguns and very close range skills, along with being a positional back attacker. In their other engraving, Gunslinger goes into pistols and rifles only, while Deadeye actually just goes into pistols only. And then to go like on the opposite end of the spectrum, Breaker and Scrapper are actually like the male and female counterpart of one another, and they're nothing alike. Every class also has their identity gauge, meter, mechanic, whatever it is, that helps them be a bit unique from the rest of the pack. But since you're not flooded with a bunch of skills and things to learn at the same time, I think learning classes in this game is actually at a very good pace. I don't really think it takes that long to get a pretty comfortable feel with the class. Raids, on the other hand, that's where a lot of your learning is going to go to. Knowing how to properly squeeze in your rotation, when to attack, when to move, when to do the mechanics, that is going to be the true test than just knowing a rotation. Lost Ark is a game without the Holy Trinity. There is no tank, and your quote-unquote healer is just a support that can only heal on certain intervals. It is your job to mitigate your damage intake, and you do have a limited amount of potions that you can use per encounter. On top of that, most endgame content besides Behemoth, which is a 16-man, is actually going to be 4 or 8-man content. And all these encounters are designed to pretty much give every player some sort of agency or some sort of mechanic to do. There's going to be something that everybody's going to have to do, otherwise people are going to die, probably. So Lost Ark raids really help you gain a lot of agency and just feeling that you're contributing because you have to participate in mechanics. Everything is designed for the entire party. Not exactly every boss, but there is going to be a lot of them that require everybody alive and to do a mechanic. I also very much appreciate the little amount of trash mobs there is in this game, and also the fact that when you die, you just revive right in front of the boss room. And for those 2 things to shine, you really have to have a really well polished and good feeling combat system, which this game absolutely has. It's highly responsive, and overall it just feels good. I don't really know how to describe it besides the fact that I just can't get this anywhere else. And then when I got to this point on my notes, I was like, man, is that really it? So I asked around, and yeah, that's pretty much it. The only other response I got is, let's see, this Canadian cat girl said, "Cares can be hot, lol." Yeah. But on a serious note, for this game being on a 2 version old Unreal, it does actually look pretty good. The developers actually do a really good job of working what they have. But yeah, I do wish there was a graphics update still. And now we're on to the parts of the game that make us really sad. Now, if you ever looked into Lost Ark at all, you probably heard people talk about the game being a job and calling it homework. Believe it or not, MMOs are not designed to respect your time. They are very much quite the opposite. They are trying to take advantage of your inability to respect your own time. They want you to play daily. They want you to create habits. They want this game to be a part of your life, and that's what Lost Ark does. Daily, you have to do your 2 Chaos Dungeons, 1 come Tier 4 and only for Tier 4, 1 Guardian Raid, and 3 doing a task. Weekly, you're going to be running your 3 raids, and you're probably going to be running your cube tickets that you're getting from Chaos Dungeon. Casually playing, we could say you're spending 7 to 10 minutes on your daily content, and maybe 2 to 3 hours on raids, depending on how it goes. But that can also go up to like 5 to 6 hours, even more. It doesn't seem that bad in the grand scheme of things doing all that in a week, but then when you think about how this game's designed to push you towards playing 6 characters and doing all this on 6 characters. And that's because this game isn't designed for you to solo self-fund one character to get all the way to the endgame content and stay there on its own. Your main source of materials is going to be doing chaos dungeons and daily content, something that you are limited to on a single character, but you can get it on other characters and funnel that over. In the same vein, your most consistent source of gold is going to be raiding. You can only do 3 on a character, so you want to do it on multiple characters, and all this is limited to 6 characters a week. So to quote unquote efficiently play the game, you're going to want to actually have a 6 character roster. And you still can benefit off of more, but yeah, this game, it's a lot of time. And so if you intend to stay on the front lines doing the latest raid, the latest content every time, then yes, you're going to feel obligated to do this stuff like it's a job or homework that you got to do every day. At the end of the day, a lot of people are doing this stuff not because they want to, but because they feel like they have to. So about those raids, let's talk about those a little bit more. If you get a clean one shot, you're looking probably at like 20 to 30 minutes on a more recent raid. But a single person scoring a single mechanic could just invalidate in 20 minutes of your raid and make you restart the entire fight. When you're stuck in a raid for a very long time, just dying, retrying over and over, we call this jail. And because of how this game is designed and how most players, most hardcore players, most dedicated people, pretty much everybody who's left in this game right now, they're doing their 18 raids a week. And they're not doing it for the raid themselves, they're doing it for the reward. So in an attempt to avoid jails, people raise the standards or become really picky about who they invite to their raids. This results in what's called gatekeeping. Since you apply to lobbies and people can see your character panel and all that, when it comes to mostly DPS, raid leaders will be looking for very grossly overqualified looking characters. Characters who have done the power system for the raid. Characters with titles showing that they have cleared the raid. Ones that are over leveled and over geared for the raid. Theoretically, this is how they reduce their chances of being stuck in a jail. Ironically, this also creates a space for things known as busing and piloting, which is going to be paid carries and also paid RMT ways for people to play your account and actually get certain achievements. This then in turn allows people who actually didn't play through the raid, people who got carried basically AFK through it, have the power systems, have the titles, people who had somebody pilot their account to do a deathless run of the Hell Mode raid, which is the hardest version of a raid. And then those customers, those people who bought those buses and pilots are now geared up enough that they get accepted into a normal lobby. And then surprise, they're the jailer. Luckily now for you new players, they have recently introduced solo modes and they buffed them up again, and I think they're at a pretty decent place right now. As of right now, all raids but the final 3 are soloable, which really allows you to avoid gatekeeping and just go into stuff head first and not really have to worry about other people. You can actually just go into content blind and learn at your own pace. Because something I haven't mentioned is when you do PUG, you are expected basically just as a norm to have done a lot of research on the fight, watch videos, know what mechanics, know what to do. Because the people who are on like their 20th or 200th clear, they're not going to be tolerant of people messing up. They don't want to take the time for people to learn. They don't want to teach people. They just want to get their gold and get out. And honestly, that's not their fault. It's how the game is designed. Which on the topic of interacting with other people, this game doesn't really totally feel like a MMO. Since everything is super instant space, you really only see people when you're just loitering in town and they're pretty much just usually just AFK. Even when you do pug up and do runs, most people just treat the rest of the party basically like NPCs. They try to get by with as little conversation as possible. And that's just how it is. Oh boy, so let's talk about money now. Yes, there is a cash shop. Yes, it is pay to win. Now, while pay to win is a spectrum, and while no power is exclusively just from the shop, I do agree with the bald man. If you can pay money and get an advantage over everybody else, it's pay to win, no matter what, no matter how big or small the advantage is. The overall prices are just really, really expensive. I pretty much only buy ARC passes and also just cosmetics. The price in this game is so bad that I would say roughly 80% of the player base that's left, I would say they probably RMT. The value of buying gold through RMT versus the game itself, it's pretty nuts. And the truth is people do it because they have no fear. Pretty much the worst punishment we've ever seen for RMT is people going into negative gold, getting that gold taken away, but even then they just got a 3-day ban and they're back in. They can just work off their debt, or some of those people just trade off everything from that account to a new one and they RMT again because it's just cheaper than doing it legit. And this time they might not get caught. Now, Tier 4/Season 3 is what's known as a soft reset. Now, when a game like World of Warcraft or Final Fantasy, they release a new expansion, they do a hard reset. Players will get like a level boost and everybody can start off basically at 0 together and experience all the new content together without worrying about all the old stuff. However, in a free-to-play MMO, developers are afraid of doing that. This is because they have their Turbo Omega whales who have spent thousands and thousands of dollars on this game, and they're very much afraid of having everything that they've invested on go down to zero and those people quitting the game. And so for that reason, they resort to soft resets. So when you start off, your honing chances are at like 20, but eventually as you get deeper into the game, they go down to 2%. Then they introduced a raid with a new gear set, and then you put that gear set, infuse it with your old one, putting it to a stronger gear set, but you go down to plus 12, plus 13, whatever, from a plus 20. And this results in your 2% chance now going back up to a 10% chance. And then it works on a scale, so the higher you are before transferring to the new gear, the higher you'll be after. This softens the blow for the hyper invested. And on top of that, they work off old systems from Tier 3. A lot of this just makes Lost Ark very unapproachable for new players. You can't just go straight into Tier 4 and only do Tier 4 stuff. You're going to have to tinker around with Tier 3. Like, if you get like a power pass, whatever, boost up, you still have to finish up the end of Tier 3. You have to do multiple systems of power in Tier 3. And then in Tier 4, they introduced something called the Ark Passive, which combines multiple systems that they introduced over time in Lost Ark and combined it all into one different system. And instead of overhauling the entire game and all those systems, they just made it a new system that you transition over to. And I'd say that's what worries me the most about the future of this game. They focus so much on the 5% that will never quit that they've made a game that really alienates new players. And they try to add events that give power passes, boost events, the jumpstart servers, which will, be a lot of that too, to help people push up towards the end. But all routes lead up to the other major concern that it's kind of been outlined in this video so far. You will end up at this point where you're just doing the same things day in and day out, week in and week out. The game is basically designed to burn you out. Unironically, the one person I talked to who never really talked about being burned out, he was a serial RMTer. And another thing that I assume a large part of the community does is they actually bought their Chaos Dungeons. So to sum things up, Lost Ark makes a best-in-class combat and raid system to the point that players will put up with a lot of really poorly designed and predatory systems just because they can't get this experience anywhere else. But because of how this game is designed, even those great things, they become dull over time because you just have to do it so many times, day after day after day, week after week after week. It's kind of led the game and community to a weird place where it's like you're not being efficient for the sake of being efficient, you're being efficient because you want to spend as little time playing the game as possible. You want to one-shot all your raids so you get them all done, you can be done for the week. Because the raid and the contents are not about doing the content anymore, they're about getting the rewards at the end so you're ready for the next one coming up. But I do think that if you are interested in the raids, the classes, the combat systems, you should absolutely try Lost Ark. I know that about 2/3 of this video was talking about the bad points about it, but I think as somebody who's just getting into Lost Ark, as it is right now, I think that you can actually have a decent time playing it. If you can avoid FOMO and just play solo raids, just tinker around when you want to at your own pace, Lost Ark can still be a pretty fun game for casual players. And then from there, you can decide if you want to frontline or just not play the game at all. And also frontline means just being at the latest content basically when it releases. For me, I intend to play this game a fraction of the time I used to. I used to frontline. I used to push 6 characters at once through all the endgame content on all of them. To respect my own time and also play other games, I've decided that I'm only going to really play one character. The other 5 characters, my ults, they're going to be something that I do just kind of when I feel like it and hope that I can maintain and keep my main up to normal mode of the latest content. My static has pretty much all quit. There's a few left, but they kind of just do their own thing now. I do have another group, but they all frontline hard mode and I just don't want to do that. So what I'll most likely end up doing is just playing normal with their ults after they clear their hard mode. I haven't done a raid in about 2 months and I don't feel bad about it. And hopefully down the line during T4, I can actually make a video about how my experience is going just playing the one character and how much I play the other characters to see how much it takes to maintain that one character. I do think for this game to ever have any sort of redemption arc, they do have to reconsider how progression goes. I don't have the answers, but I do know that every friend that I've had that played this game, all of them have quit because they just don't have the time for things. They don't want to put all their time into one game. Every other flaw of the game, they could overlook it, but they couldn't overlook the fact that they have to play and do these daily and weekly contents day in and day out. And that really concludes it. That concludes my thoughts of really the pros and cons of Lost Ark, and just really give you an idea of where I'm at right now. So for those of you who have been playing Lost Ark or did play Lost Ark, what did I forget to talk about? And for those of you who haven't played Lost Ark, if this video has helped you in any way, let me know. And, like, sub, so on and so forth, blah, blah, blah.